We the people of the state of Jefferson, ever mindful of the rights we hold most dear, life, liberty, and property, are compelled to establish this, our new state, for the preservation of these natural inalienable rights. Our mandate for the protection of life, liberty, and property gives urgent voice to our demand for representation that reflects our needs, our history, our culture, and our moral impervitude. Time has come for 51. This is Terry Rapoza.
And Win Carpenter. You're listening to Jefferson State of Mind podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is Terry Rapoza and Win Carpenter. We're here with Jefferson State of Mind, and we have a special guest today. It is Erik Jensen. He is running for the district attorney. First day of my new tongue. Sorry about that. For Shasta County. How are you, Erik?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Great. Tell us a little something about yourself. Who is Erik?
All right. Well, born in 1975, raised in Orange County, California, which is, some of your guests or audience may know, was the bastion of conservatism for many, many decades. My father was a police officer, spent his career in law enforcement, raised me to be conservative, to love the truth, and have a passion for justice. And that was kind of the defining features of my upbringing. As a public officer, my dad didn't have a huge salary. He worked very hard and ensured that my mom could stay home with me and my two siblings. And yeah, we had a good life. I can say that much. It was good times.
So what inspired you to go into law? What was the thing that to you that really was moving you toward your career?
Well, I guess we got to go back. So my dad had instilled in me a love for justice and truth. I had mentioned that. And that stayed with me throughout my life. I became very passionate about what truth was. And so in high school, when most of the kids were thinking about less substantive issues, I was really wrestling with more existential thoughts. What was truth philosophically, religiously, and politically. And so I started to get involved in, or at least pay attention to, politics at a very keen level. I mean, it was something I was just uniquely interested in. I mean, as a matter of fact, back in 1993, I was on the Pat Buchanan for President committee.
Oh, okay.
I thought that he was the right candidate, and I still believe that he would have been the right candidate back when he was running against George Bush in the primaries. But it was because of truth. I looked at it, and I had a passion for it, and it always bothered me that other people didn't share that same passion. It was something that I still struggle with today. Truth is tremendously important. I think that it is probably the most important aspect of life. Justice is a part of that. So going through high school, I was the Rush Limbaugh kid. I was the guy that, in fact, I remember a gal giving me a book. It was she was trying to convert me. It was like some feminist book after I had given her a Rush Limbaugh book as an invitation to the prom.
Did she go out with you?
No. Actually, well, I take that back. She went out with me, but it wasn't to the prom. She already had another invite, and she, I think the author's name of that book was Susan Faludi. She was a well-known feminist, and yeah, I mean, so I was interested in politics and truth in high school. When I got into college, I went to Cal State Fullerton, and I was part of the Young Republicans, and I was still maintaining a keen interest in politics, still searching for truth. I focused a lot of my attention on philosophy. I had a professor, I remember him, Dr. Smith, who had encouraged me to take the LSAT, okay? I remember him telling me, he said, Mr. Jensen, he said, you're very good at logic. and I would make a suggestion that you take the LSAT because it's heavily loaded on logic. I had no interest in becoming a lawyer at that time, but on his recommendation, I took the LSAT. Didn't even know at that time that it was something that people prepare for months and sometimes even years in advance. So I was uniquely relaxed going into the exam. Went into the exam, and I saw these people chain smoking in line, waiting to be admitted to the exam facilities and cramming, and I had nothing. I was just walking in. And lo and behold, I did well on the exam, and that opened the door for law school. And I wasn't even still sure that I wanted to be an attorney at that point. I thought perhaps I might go into a seminary. And, I'm a believer in providence and calling, and I want to be faithful to that, whatever it is. And I was really at a crossroads as to what direction or trajectory my life would take. And I remember coming home from a retreat at Calvary Chapel. It was in Marietta Hot Springs. I came home from that retreat where I was wrestling with that issue. And really the reason I thought that I wanted to be a pastor or some sort of Bible teacher at the time was because I cared about truth. And I wanted to have a vehicle or a platform to do that. And for me, that meant, like a lot of young men at that time, that they would go into ministry, because that's one of the few platforms in the modern era where you can speak on things to other people in a passionate way. So I got home from that retreat, and in the mail I had received a scholarship to law school, considered it a sign, and ended up getting a full ride at Chapman University. And how do you say no to that, right?
You don't.
I didn't have to pay a dime. So the first year, I said, well, I'll do it. And if I get my scholarship renewed, well, I guess I'll do it again. And half of our class dropped out because of grades. They failed out, basically. We were going through ABA accreditation at the time, so they instituted a forced mandatory distribution, 2.3, which meant that for every A that was given, an F had to be given. So out of a class of about 50 that started, we ended up with 25 before the end of the year. And so the issue with me was I had a scholarship that was contingent upon scoring in the top 10% of my class.
Oh my gosh.
So, I didn't read the fine print. And when you only have 25 people in your class, you could do the math and figure out that it
You're top two.
yeah. So I ended up getting it that first year. I got it renewed, so I stayed. And after you had 2 years paid, I had to go through with it, right? So finished up law school there. I had the opportunity to meet some awesome people. One of my instructors was Hugh Hewitt, who's a radio personality. Yeah. He actually does television too. And actually, that was the most boring class I ever had because I agreed with most of the things that he was saying. And I was used to being in classes where I disagreed with my professors at just about every level. I was the guy asking the provocative questions that would irritate my professors. But in spite of that, I did graduate with high honors at Cal State Fullerton and then went to Chapman University. Like I said, I was under Hugh Hewitt was one of my professors. Also got to meet Clarence Thomas, which was a fantastic opportunity. Really nice and humble guy. In fact, I was recalling that I had asked him what was the most difficult thing of being a Supreme Court justice. This is on the heels of the Anita Hill hearings and the what did he call it, a modern day lynching. And
pretty much
nothing worse than being conservative and black in America. And so what he told me was that the worst thing about being a Supreme Court justice was going into McDonald's and using a coupon and having people look at you askew. And I thought that was really kind of funny. And in spite of the issues that he had with the hearings, he was resolute. I mean, that was the other thing that stuck with me was I had talked to him about how he felt and the injustice really that I thought was done during those hearings. And he said, Erik, he said, what did they accomplish on that? And I thought about it, and I said, I don't know what. And he said, exactly nothing.
Nothing.
So anyway, so that was a great experience. Graduated law school, and then I had to figure out what I was going to do. And I had been working at the district attorney's office in Orange County as a law clerk. I was under the supervision of probably my best mentor, a man by the name of Lou Rosenblum, who probably is the best prosecutor, living prosecutor in the state. He has a 68-0 death penalty conviction record, which will never be broken because we're not executing people anymore. But really good man, and under his tutelage at the family violence unit at that office, I was able to get my hands on a lot of very interesting things.
How long were you there?
About a year and a half. I wrote a paper for the then district attorney, Tony Rakakis. I was commissioned to write a paper on medical marijuana. That was before, we had everything had become, before all the legalization. But we knew that it was coming, and so he asked me to write a paper on that, and I did. Then I got married and had to get a job fast. And I'll tell you one thing before I go into that. One thing that I saw at the district attorney's office that, my dad was a cop. I love justice. And for me, going into the district attorney's office seemed like the natural thing to do.
Yeah.
I don't like bad guys.
Right.
I like the good guy to win. And but I saw an interesting thing. So I was given these cases, and I was tasked with seeing whether they met the requisite elements of the crime. And the investigators would compile their data, and then I would look at it and give an objective review. Well, what I noticed was that there wasn't a one-for-one correlation based upon my recommendations and the actual charges that were filed. Very often, the decision made came down to things completely unrelated to the facts.
Like?
Who somebody knew, who somebody was related to, whether they liked that person or not. Like, you could know somebody.
Irish justice.
Well, and that was very disturbing for me. I mean, like I said, truth and justice were the big things for me, and I think that in large part I was disillusioned by that. And so when I went into private practice and started working, I was married in 2000 and I've been married 17 years. So when I got
You asked us not to ask you that question.
I know.
Come on, buddy.
So when I got
Trying
married,
to help you out here.
I had to, I had to make money, obviously, right? So
Sure.
I went into private practice, started doing civil stuff, and I was called by Mr. Rosenblum, and he said, "Hey, we'd like to have you at the DA's office." I said, "I can't do it. I couldn't take the financial hit at the time, and turned that down." So I've been in private practice for almost the last 20 years, doing various things. The last 18 have been primarily focused on defending large companies from workers' compensation fraud, investigating whether there is fraud in the first place, and then making sure that people don't receive any more than is fair. So, and then, I've been, then somehow I got up here. Do you want to hear about that?
Yes.
Okay, so being a keen observer of politics, I was increasingly feeling like a fish out of water in Orange County.
I'll bet.
The political climate was changing. There were, the writing was on the wall. And I had appreciated this back in high school. This is the thing I was trying to ring the bell or the alarm on back then. And everything that I could see happening was happening, and it was happening at an accelerated pace. And so when I had my twins, who are now 12, have identical twin boys, I think it's a natural inclination of any parent to be protective and,
Sure.
and concerned, right?
Sure.
So it's no longer just about you and the years that you're going to live out on this planet. It's about your progeny, your children. And I started paying attention to what they were watching on TV, started paying attention to what they were eating, started paying attention to the political climate and the future that they would have in the state of California. And I became very concerned. So in that process, I began to appreciate that we had to leave because like I said, the political tone was changing. I did not see, I kind of think we reached a critical mass there where it wasn't going to become more conservative at any point in time. It was only going to become more progressive, and the policies that come with it. And, I was able to see a lot of this stuff. I think that the reason I was so keenly aware of it or, that it was on my radar was largely from my dad. Because my dad was retired as a deputy chief in the city of Santa Ana, and he would come home with stories, and they were sad. I mean, and what used to be limited, the problems that were limited to a particular few cities in Orange County began to leak out, and it was almost inevitable. My dad would tell me that he'd get these briefings from the FBI, and he'd come home depressed because it was so sad how rampant and systemic crime was. In fact, I remember him saying to me something about one day he came home and he said, "I am almost inclined to believe that there are more dishonest businesses operating in this city than honest ones." And of course, that doesn't bode well for a future of a city or a town or a county or any of that. So when I started to see the policies that were being enacted and the shifts that were occurring politically, I knew that it was just a matter of time and that I could live out another 5-10 years in Orange County with relative ease. My kids certainly wouldn't be able to.
Right.
And so we wanted for them what we had for ourselves, which was trees, space, and community. During my lifetime in Orange County, things went from being relatively small. People knew each other. I go around my hometown and people would know me, to being almost anonymous. And that's sad. And then when we came up here, so I basically told my wife, I said, "Here's a map of the state." I said, "Get me out of here and do the research." And my wife's really good at research. And she came up with this place. She said, "Look at this town here, Shasta County." And I said, "That looks fantastic." And, we looked at the votes, how Shasta County had voted in elections. We looked at population size and, really did the research. And that was our fantasy. And then a few years later, I think it was around Christmas time, which is a particularly stressful time when you're in the suburbs. People are driving around, nobody's happy, a lot of anxiety. And I said, "We got to go. We just have to go." And I got a job opportunity up here. And it was rather providential in the way that it unfolded within a matter of I think it was 72 hours. I was booking an interview
Wow.
in Reading. So I came up, I interviewed, and immediately the difference was clear. I mean, it was, we walked around and people didn't look at you funny because you had 4 kids. People were...
They probably said, is that all?
Yeah. People talked about politics and faith in public and weren't embarrassed by those things. There was space. And I remember going into, this is perfect on the State of Jefferson podcast here. I remember going into an Ace Hardware and seeing a T-shirt that said, "We will not comply." And I said, I didn't know what they're answering that question, what the question is that they're answering on that shirt, but man, I like the sentiment. And I said, these are my people. And for the last 6 years, we've enjoyed, a little over 6 years, we've enjoyed living in Shasta County, working here, and it's just been an absolute blessing. These are our people, and this is where we hope that our kids will grow up and have children.
I think the great thing about this is you're invested in the community already. I mean, you're already looking at it. This is home for you.
Yeah.
So the things that happen in this town, to take the responsibility as the district attorney is really commendable. I think it's great. Now, we've got about 9 minutes left. I want to ask you a couple questions about the transition that you would make from where you are now. And it's great to hear you have the background that you have. That's amazing. I knew none of that. The transition that you would make, in making that transition, what do you see as your strong point and your biggest hurdle?
Well, okay, you're talking transition to the role of district attorney?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, first of all, I think if I could backtrack and get into how this even came on my radar. I'm not a career politician. I'm not somebody who had ambitions in government. This is a grassroots phenomenon. I was contacted by members of the community who knew my politics, knew my conviction, knew that I was willing to stand for truth in spite of opposition. And they approached me and they asked me if I would consider doing this. And because the people were so good, because I had such respect for the things that they had done, I was willing to entertain it. This is not a comfortable decision for me by any means. I have a comfortable life as it is, doing a job that is, I've mastered in many respects. And this is something that I am doing for the betterment of the community and for the future of my children. And for that reason, I'm taking it on. And really, this isn't about me. This is about people wanting a change in their community. And I want to be faithful to those people and faithful to our community. And I want the story to be written. When my kids think about what their dad did in a very critical time in history, and I believe that that's what we're at.
Absolutely.
I want it to be that their dad fought and that he did something. Win, lose, or draw, dad fought.
I think the most commendable thing here is I can tell that, you're doing this because you believe that you can make a difference.
100%.
You believe that, number one. And number two, the other thing I love about this is it's not totally your comfort zone, which makes you
Perfect.
Because the thing is that stepping out of that, is absolutely, it shows strong character. It shows conviction on your part. You're not just giving us lip service here. You really believe this stuff.
And faith. You have to have faith in order to step out of your comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's calling. I mean, it's 100% calling. We came up here, I believe, that was part of our calling to raise our children in this place. Up until a month and a half ago, my calling was to raise happy, healthy, resilient children. My calling right now is to be district attorney of Shasta County. And if you want to address, I can talk to you about the other issues. You mentioned, first of all, I think that the strong suit is that I'm not part of the system.
The good old boy system.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just not even that. I mean, it's the fact that you have a government agency that is essentially operating without any checks and balances. It almost becomes, dare I say, cancerous for any government agency. When you have people that essentially consider their position to be one of promotion rather than an election open to the public, you're going to have problems. And there's almost a sense of government entitlement that, I've had this position for so many years, and so therefore I'm entitled to it. And think about just how dysfunctional that is. Because if you're in that office, who's going to challenge that person? If you've been crowned king or queen in this case, and are you going to take on your boss? No way. Not unless you're going to retire.
Right. There were some things that were said on a radio program a week ago that was said by Stephanie Bridget, who is our district attorney right now. And she was bringing some things up that weren't exactly factual on the Carla Zapata case. So I called her, and I called the office there, and I wanted to speak to her about it to get clarification on exactly what she meant, where she was coming from. And I was told she doesn't take phone calls. Then I said, well, she really is an elected official. And the other comment was, well, no, she's the DA.
No, she's the DA. Is what they said?
So I mean, I'm just to your point, I find that odd. I think that I can understand being busy. I can understand that. I can understand the best way to get to a public official a lot of times is with email, and I get that. But I think that what you're saying, that type of tone, and she may not be the only DA who has that type of policy.
Right.
But would your policy be more transparent with the public?
Well, my key pillars that I've been, if you look at my business card, or transparency, accountability, integrity. And I think those all naturally flow one to the other, right? So first of all, you got to be transparent. I mean, the public has to know what's going on. And without transparency, it is impossible to have accountability. And this is almost by definition. And without accountability, you open the door for issues of integrity. And when I talk about transparency, what I'm talking about is giving the public enough information where they can objectively measure your results, not press releases, and not a few hand-picked stories of success. I mean, you couldn't do that in private industry. I couldn't do that. At the end of the day, my boss is going to look at my production, simple metric. And if I said, hey, boss, my production was horrible, but you want to hear about this great story or that great story? It wouldn't cut the mustard. And it shouldn't cut the mustard for the people of Shasta County in respect to their district attorney. So my hope is that we can restore that to that office, make it better than it's ever been. Because I think this is a position that has flown under most people's radar. I talk to a lot of people in the community. They're not clear on who the district attorney is, what it is that they do, and it seems to be a simple check the box, who's the incumbent, right? And have about the only thing that really hampers a district attorney, a sitting district attorney, is some major misstep. Like, for instance, let's say a notorious criminal doesn't get convicted when everybody knows that they should. But even at that, unless that is being televised, it's very difficult for the public to ascertain what's really going on, because there's a myriad of excuses. It's not a 1-for-1 ratio. That's fair. I mean, the district attorney doesn't have complete control over crime, for instance. There are other factors, so it is difficult for the public to know what's going on. My encouragement this time around is that they take a look, and that they actually make sure that their decision is based upon the future of their children and their county, and that we do the right thing. I mean, you had asked me about what I thought would be my best advantages and most difficult obstacles. And I think it is that whole issue of establishment. When you're the district attorney, you have the ability to pump out press releases that get regurgitated by the mainstream media as news. That's a powerful tool. You also have the label of incumbent next to your name. And that carries a lot of weight with a good segment of the population. So that's going to be the biggest obstacle. But I also think that same thing, the fact that I'm not part of the establishment, is my greatest tool. That I think I can really go in and effectuate change. I'm not bound by relationships. I don't have obligations to other bureaucrats that I got to maintain for political advantage. So I think that gives me a unique opportunity with a fresh set of eyes from private industry to come in and to make things well.
Erik Jensen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Running for Shasta County District Attorney. Time has come.
For 51.
We'll see you on part 2.
Right on. Hey, CA, come out and play. Have you seen the bill we all have to pay? It's not our bill. We had no say. You don't serve us, you serve LA. The time has come for 51 in a Jefferson state of mind.